Afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me all okay? Everybody see me over the lectern? Great. Well, it's great to see so many of you here today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our wonderful host, the National Memorial Arboretum. Hopefully those who went on the tour really enjoyed it. A few formalities. Fire escape is just at the back of the room on the right, so you'll be able to see it just at the door in the corner. And if you need the toilet, they're just back by a reception. Today's event is also being recorded and will be distributed after the event as well, and we'll be live tweeting with #WeAreStaffordshire. So just to introduce myself, I don't think many of you will know me, but I'm the Assistant Place Brand Manager for We Are Staffordshire. So we've got the lovely Louisa in the room, who you'll all know really well with her new addition to the family, but I'll be leading on the We Are Staffordshire work for the rest of this year. So just to remind you all around We Are Staffordshire in the work that we're here to do, we're here to bang the drum for Staffordshire, and our purpose in creating a brand and story is to understand what makes us special and different, and then to market and celebrate Staffordshire both regionally and nationally. And so we're bringing the Staffordshire story to life through events, activity and engagement. And I know there's a lot of ambassadors in the room that are here to help us do that, so thank you for that. In terms of some work that we've been doing recently, so over the past 6 months we've worked on a new campaign to cherish our national livability here in Staffordshire. So this is a place to thrive, which we'll be launching very soon, and this is to summarise the quality of life offer that we have here in Staffordshire. Hopefully all those in the room all live in the area and all enjoy it, so it's great that we've brought this offer together around places that you can live, activities that you can do on a weekend, where you send your children to school, everything that encompasses a great quality of life. So there'll be a new prospectus and campaign launching on the 1st of May, which is Staffordshire Day for those who don't know, and will be available for you to use and enjoy. So for the likes of recruiters, agents, businesses in the area, we hope that you'll find it a wonderful resource. Alongside this, we've also created a new video to promote the county. So I'm just going to show you a 1-minute video, which will bring the prospectus and work to life. So this new video will hopefully help us promote the county as a wonderful place to live. Obviously, we would love your support in doing that. So we've actually got Carmen in the room today. Carmen, I don't know if you want to put your hand up so everybody knows. We're capturing as many testimonials as we can. So if you do have a minute to spare, then head over to Carmen at the end of the event just to show and talk about why you love Staffordshire and why you love the area as well. As I mentioned, this will all launch on the 1st of May on Staffordshire Day. And if you signed up to our communications, then you'll receive all the details. So I'll now hand over to our chair, Mark, from the National Memorial Arboretum to continue the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, and good afternoon, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to the National Memorial Arboretum. My name is Mark Ellis, and I'm the lead here at the Arboretum, which means it's my honour and pleasure to keep this place going. I'm just turning my stopwatch on because apparently I'm only allowed to talk for 58 minutes. So that's another slide to tell you who I am. I'm absolutely thrilled that we're able to partner with We Are Staffordshire to host the 11th Ambassador event. So this is a very well tried and tested format now, and very pleased to see you all here. For those of you that have been here before, or for those who've just been on one of our guided tours, you will know that the Arboretum is 150 acres of young woodland. We've got just over 25,000 trees and just over 400 memorials, 411, be 412 by the end of the week. So always growing, always developing, and those memorials are for people that have served and sacrificed on behalf of our country. Around 3/4 of them are for our armed forces, and the other quarter are for civilian organisations, the police, fire and rescue, RLNI, lots of other organisations like that. But all of them have that in common of marking those that have served and sacrificed. But in addition to commemorating lives that have been lost, we also, and always been part of our remit, to celebrate lives lived. And I think that's one of the reasons why people often talk about us being a life-affirming, a joyous, an uplifting place to visit. That's one of our real strengths. And another real strength of ours is our location here in Staffordshire, in the heart of the country. As you know, we're just 2 hours drive from about 40% of the country's population. And if we all got a shift on down to Lichfield Trent Valley Station, we'd be in central London in about 90 minutes time. So ideally situated for people to visit from all over the country. And what we do here at the Arboretum is we tell stories. We tell stories in a number of different ways. And it's the stories that are really important. Without the stories, we're just dods of rock in a woodland, is how I explain it. The stories behind those memorials that really mean something. One of the stories we tell, and there's a tree to commemorate this story just the other side of the building here, is about Lance Corporal William Coltman. He was a local lad. He was a Staffordshire lad. He was the most decorated soldier in World War I. He was awarded 5 medals for his bravery and valour, including the Victoria Cross. Now, William Coltman was a pacifist. He never fired his rifle in anger. But what he did do was he became a stretcher bearer. So he was awarded all those honours for going back into no man's land to treat and carry out those that were wounded and being left behind. A truly brave and heroic man. But something we talk about sometimes is how perhaps in Staffordshire we don't talk about our successes enough. We perhaps hide our light under a bush a little bit. And that's something else that William Coltman did himself. When he came back from the First World War, he got wind that there was a hero's reception waiting for him at Burton Railway Station. So he hopped off the train in the Potteries and he walked the last 20 miles home, slipped into the family home, put the kettle on and waited for his wife to come back. So very, very humble, didn't want to make a big fuss. And perhaps we can all be guilty of that sometimes. But of course, here in Staffordshire, we have some fantastic stories to tell. We enjoy telling the stories here at the Arboretum, and we try and make a big fuss about telling those stories. We shout about them. We try and encourage people to come to the region to hear about those stories. And here's just an example of some of the stories we've helped to tell over the last 12 months or so. In June last year, we were very proud to host the National Commemorative Service for the 40th anniversary of the end of the Falklands conflict. We also, in the summer, saw our summer proms return to the programme. Fantastic evening of music out in the grounds here. Tickets are on sale for the 2023 event. Buy them while they're hot. We also helped to celebrate the Commonwealth Games. As many people around the county did last year, we held our Arboretum Games here at the Arboretum, where we invited people along, got them to take part in games, but use that storytelling mechanism to talk about the connections between sports, service and the Commonwealth. And then just before Christmas, we held our ever popular, ever growing illuminated Arboretum, a chance to come along and see the grounds literally in a different light. And that last one is in there as another shameless plug for what we do. But it's not just stories and memories that we cherish. Here at the Arboretum, we also cherish our natural environment, the green spaces. We talk about our sustainability. Some research carried out by the Association of Leading Visitor Attractions tells us that the public, the vast majority of the public, are concerned about the environment. They want to visit places, they want to buy services, they want to use goods that support good sustainability practice. And their research has told us that the people most likely to be listened to and believed in association with sustainability, in number one spot, no surprise, National Treasure David Attenborough, but not far behind him are places like the National Trust, the Woodlands Trust, the outdoor spaces, the open spaces. That includes people like ourselves, like Trentham, like the Wildlife Trust. We have a voice, and we're not afraid to use it. We must use that voice to talk about sustainability and the environment. If we don't do that, if we don't cherish our natural world, then quite honestly, in a few years' time, nothing else will matter. That's how important this is. So what are we doing here at the Arboretum to make sure that we're behaving in a sustainable way? We have a number of things happening. 14 of us, those in the senior leadership team and the people that make the purchasing decisions, have all been on carbon literacy training. We understand our impact on the environment and we're now embedding that in our everyday discussions. So everything we do, we're considering the impact on the environment before we do that. We've started converting to electric tools wherever possible. So that's Colin, one of our grounds team, modelling the latest in electric lawnmowers. We have a herb garden here on site. So when you visit our restaurant, and if you haven't, I recommend it, all the herbs we use in the restaurant are now grown here on site. So we're not transporting those around, we're growing them and drying them and using them at the Arboretum. And then just recently, we commissioned solar panels up on the roof of our visitor centre. So around 40% of the electricity powering this presentation, in fact, it might be more than 40% with the weather outside, is generated here on site. So making sure that we reduce our impact on the environment through the energy that we use. So what of the future? That's what we're doing now. What of the future? We have some very ambitious plans. We wish to extend the Arboretum and to build a memorial woodland here in Staffordshire that recognises all those that have served during the pandemic and lost their lives as a result. The pandemic touched each and every one of us. I know it touched some of us here in the room today. From those who stayed at home in the most extraordinary circumstances and never dreamed of, to those that so freely and so bravely gave their service and in some cases their lives. We know how important remembrance is to the healing process. We understand how woodlands and new woodlands can represent new hope, new opportunity, new beginnings. And that's why we wish to commemorate the pandemic here in Staffordshire at the Arboretum. Tarmac, our neighbours, have kindly donated 25 acres of additional land for us, and we have some very ambitious plans to create a memorial woodland within that area. That's what it looks like. It's at the north end of the site, right at the far end of the site. And just to give you a flavour of what that might include, you can see that straight spine running through the centre. As visitors go through that, to begin with, they come across some still water, a pond of still water. That represents what life was like before the pandemic. It was calm, it was normal, those halcyon days of 2019. Then as you carry on through that path, you get to another pond of water. This one is rippling. There's little jets of water coming out randomly. It's a bit confusing. You're not quite sure what's happening. Very much how we all felt when COVID started appearing on the horizon, this new word that we've not heard of before. Then as you carry on, the path level drops down below the surface of the water's cascading down on either side of you. It's disorientating, it's confusing, it's noisy. You're not quite sure what's happening or why it's happening. You feel enclosed within there, much like many of us felt during those periods of lockdown. And then at the end, you come back out, there's a beautiful water feature at the end featuring a rainbow. The rainbow symbolising, again, new hope, new beginning, that symbol we all became so familiar with through the pandemic. So a beautiful space with other glades, other memorials, other opportunities in there for us to commemorate and remember. It's a beautiful project and it's something that we are very, very excited about. We have a design. It's currently going through planning at Lichfield District Council, and all being well, it'll get planning permission sometime in the next few weeks. So we have everything we need to start. We don't quite have everything we need. What we're missing is the funding. So we're having a collection on the way out, and we need £32 million. So that's our barrier at the moment. It's a multi-million pound project. It's around £32 million to build it in its entirety. We're very, very keen to talk to people, major funders, major donors, major grant givers that would like to open a conversation with us about how we might access some of those large funds. Once we've done that, once we've secured the seed funding, we'll then open it up to other members of the public who may wish to fundraise and support it as well. So that's our plans for the future. We think it's a very special place, a lovely new addition to the county, and we hope that will help to bring people here to Staffordshire. So that's all from me about the Arboretum. I've shared some lovely stories, I've shown some pretty pictures, and I've reminded us that Staffordshire is not only a beautiful place, but also a place that has a very exciting future. And the strength of these ambassador events is how we bring Staffordshire people together, hearing about new initiatives, new opportunities and success stories from around the brilliant people that make up our county, forging new relationships that could lead to future further projects and developments. These events are about building that knowledge and excitement across the fantastic county so that we can all go and be salespeople for what we have here. At the end of the event, we'll be asking for your feedback. There'll be a QR code up on the screen. So before we go, please do take a couple of moments to tell us what you think and how you like these events to develop in the future. But before that, we'll do the event. We've got some fantastic speakers, all of whom share a passion for the people and the places around the county. So we'll be hearing from His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant, Mr. Ian Dudson. We've got Jeff Sim, Head of Nature Reserves and Species Recovery at the Staffordshire Wildlife Trust. We've got Steve Anderson of CPRE, the Countryside Charity. And we've got Carol Adams, Head of Horticulture and Biodiversity at the Trentham Estate. If she doesn't talk about beavers, I'm going to be very disappointed. And then at the end, there'll be a chance for some questions and answers. So if you have any questions as we go in, don't worry, there'll be plenty of time to ask those for us to answer them at the end. So that's all from me for now. I'd now like to introduce to the lectern here a very frequent visitor, a man who's got his own loyalty card for the Arboretum, a strong supporter of everything we do. So please welcome His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant, Mr. Ian Dudson.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me add my my welcome to that of Mark to you all here this afternoon. I've been asked to spend 10 minutes talking about the role of a Lord Lieutenant. It normally takes me about 10 times that amount of time. So I'm going to, it's going to be a very whistle-stop tour among certain aspects of my role, our role, but one that I think is going to focus hopefully on our theme for this afternoon of cherishing this place, but also individuals, organisations and companies. Brief introduction in terms of the lieutenancy. Lord Lieutenants, we are the monarch's personal representative in each county. There are 98 of us across the United Kingdom. It is, which is a surprise for many people, an entirely voluntary role. Once we're appointed, we serve until the age of 75. And it may shock some of you in the room to know that I've only got 2 years before I reach that point. We are required to appoint deputies, and the number of deputies is dependent upon the population of the county. And when I talk about the county, I'm talking about the ceremonial county, which of course includes the city of Stoke-on-Trent. Almost, or maybe just over now, 1.3 million people entitles me to appoint 59 deputies. And I currently have around 50 or so. When we were first appointed in the 1540s by Henry VIII, it was a purely military role. Since that time, whilst we still have a military involvement, I'm glad to say that the role has expanded such that we are now involved in all aspects of the county life. And overall, as a lieutenancy, we undertake some 400 engagements every year. Today, I'm going to concentrate on the aspects I referred to earlier, and that's royal visits and King's Awards and personal honours. In many respects, royal visits are probably the highest profile part of the role. We average about 10 royal visits a year. And I must say that Mark alluded to the fact that I'm a frequent visitor here because the Arboretum probably attracts an average of 5 or 6 visits by itself. It is our responsibility within the Lieutenancy to plan all these royal visits. And the challenge going forward is that we're going to have to be more innovative as the number of working members of the royal family reduces significantly from where it has been over the past 10 years. So my first plea this afternoon is, if you have ideas of what would make an interesting royal visit, then please let us know. In terms of personal honours, the British honours system, one of the strongest in the world, has evolved over 650 years. Roughly 2,500 people are recognised for their outstanding contributions on an annual basis. If I work that out on the basis of the population of this county, we should be having 50 people recognised on average per year. The sad reality is that we're only somewhere over half that number. And again, I think this alludes to the point that Mark just made, that we're not the best in not only putting our own head above the parapet, but also recognising others. So my second plea this afternoon is, please help us rectify that. The honours system and the nominations is actually a lot more straightforward than people realise. A form is available online. There is a process for letters of support, but we in the office can help with all that. And so if you know of somebody you feel should be nominated, then my encouragement would be, don't hesitate, give it a go. There are some key criteria. They have to still be involved in the activity for which they're being nominated. And of course, it shouldn't be purely the day job. And finally, a plug for the most recently introduced honour within the British Empire is the British Empire Medal, which is for purely very local contributions, reintroduced in 2012, and a wonderful addition, in our view, to the overall system. Turning to King's Awards. King's Awards for Enterprise, originally introduced, of course, as the Queen's Awards back in 1965. They are the most prestigious business award available to any company in the UK. There are four categories: international trade, innovation, sustainable development, and promoting opportunity. Any company that receives an award, it's valid for 5 years. The awards are applied for by the company concerned, and there are only about 200 winners nationwide per year. In Staffordshire, we had 6 winners last year, and later this week, at the end of this week, the winners for 2023 will be announced. As I said, applications are made by the company concerned, and the period opens from the 6th of May to the 6th of September each year. There's a winners' reception either at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, and all the award presentations are done locally by me or my Vice Lord Lieutenant. Sorry. Moving to the King's Award for Voluntary Service. This is the most recent addition to King's Awards, introduced by Our Late Majesty in 2002 to mark her Golden Jubilee. We have a very soft spot for this award here in Staffordshire because we feel that it fills a significant gap in the honours system, recognising as it does groups of volunteers rather than individuals. It is again the highest award that any such group can achieve, It's equivalent to the MBE, and the criteria are that the group has to be led and dependent upon volunteers. We now have over 100 winners here in Staffordshire. If you're an organisation that's received the award, it is permanent. It is permanent, so you never need to reapply. Once nominations have been received in London, they're fed back to us in the county, and I and my deputies then undertake a process of evaluation for all the nominations, making our recommendations prior to the judges making their decisions. And again, all the presentations are done locally here in Staffordshire. So I'm just going to finish with a repeated plea for your help when it comes to helping us identify individuals, organisations, and indeed companies. We need more nominations. We need more applications. And as the saying goes, if you're not in it, you can't win it. So please take away the request from all of us in the lieutenancy, I, my 50+ deputies, and most importantly, the support staff that I have in the office in Stafford, courtesy of the support that I get from Staffordshire County Council, which is absolutely back on. Yes, it's absolutely essential in us being able to do what we do. So thank you very much for listening, and happy to take questions at the end, as Mark mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. And I think a clear message there. There's an opportunity to behave in a way that was alien to William Coltman, and to recognise our achievements, recognise the achievements of those within our county, and to make sure that people get the due recognition that they deserve. So cherishing our people, one theme there. I also spoke about cherishing our natural environment, and I'd like to welcome Jeff Sim to the lectern from Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, who I'm guessing is going to talk more about cherishing our natural environment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here, though slightly scary to be among so many of you. So yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation today. So as the slide says, my name is Jeff Sim, and I'll go back. And I am the head of nature reserves at Staffordshire Wildlife Trust. So for those of you who aren't aware who Staffordshire Wildlife Trust are, we're a conservation charity. We're dedicated to protecting and enhancing the wildlife and the wild places of Staffordshire. We have got around 80 members of staff, and we really survive thanks to our network of volunteers. So we've got about 600 volunteers who are our lifeblood, and we really couldn't survive without them. We're also a membership organisation, and there may be 1 or 2 members in the room, hopefully. We have about 18,000 across the county who pay a small contribution every month towards our work. And if you're not a member, then you can join by accessing our website and helping us really move wildlife forward across the county. So as the slide says, I'm the head of our nature reserves team. Most of our staff actually work in people engagement. So we do a lot of work with schools, with youngsters. We do formal environmental education work, getting kids to come to our sites. But we also do informal wild play as well, trying to get the kids away from their screens, away from their technology, making dens outside, enjoying the outdoors, getting passionate about our wonderful wildlife that we have. So that's about half our staff are actually employed doing that work. My team is the nature reserves team, and we look after our nature reserves, as the name suggests. So in the county, we've got 43 nature reserves, of which the nearest one is just over the river here. So it's just the other side of the Tame. Staffordshire is a really lovely county, and we're really fortunate that it is so diverse. We've got nearly every single type of habitat that you would ever want to see. So we've got the great river corridors of the Tame and the Trent valleys. We've got some amazing wetlands. We've got some great woodlands. We've got the heathlands of Cannock Chase. And then we've got the uplands of the Peak District. And don't tell Derbyshire, but by far the best part of the Peak District is actually in Staffordshire. So over the next 8 or 9 minutes, I'm just going to talk you through some of the different habitats that we have and some of the wildlife that we have in our great county. So these are our nature reserves. As I said, they're all free to visit. Information about each one is on our website. Some of them are really important sites. Some of these sites are nationally important and internationally important for the wildlife that live there. So first of all, this is our headquarters. This is the Wolseley Centre, which is just on the edge of Cannock Chase. It's a great place to go for families. It's a lovely, safe place to go. Big grounds, walking down. You can go down to the Trent, lots of trails. There's a lovely cafe there. There's a good shop. And if you've never been, I'd really recommend a visit. You can spend a good half a day there, losing yourself in the grounds. So before I mention the different habitats that we have, so I'm now just going to talk about some of the different types of places you can go and really why Staffordshire is such a special place. So first of all, heathland. So we have probably one of the largest amounts of lowland heath in the country. Most of that is found on and around Cannock Chase. And some of the places we manage are places like Gentleshire Common, Highgate Common closer to Wolverhampton. And these are places where we have lovely sandy soils, and you've got these areas of traditional heathland vegetation. Really special places for creepy crawlies. So if you don't like creepy crawlies, I'm not going to apologise. They are really, really special places. So we've got ground nesting bees, which tunnel into the sandy soils. So there are 140 different species of these bees and wasps. They're all really rare. They're all really special because a lot of these heathland sites have been lost. But they do a great service to us. You know, they go and they pollinate our crops, and we couldn't survive without these colonies of wild bees. This is not a wild bee. This is a glowworm, and there's only 3 places left in the county where glowworms still live. And Highgate Common, which is south of Cannock Chase, is one of these places. And glowworms are amazing. They actually feed on slugs and snails whilst they're young, and then they emerge as this beautiful beetle which glows in around May and June. So amazing place, amazing insects to go and see. And heathlands are very, very important places for wildlife. Hopefully I can show you a video now. Is that working? No, that's not. Never mind, that's okay. So moving on to woodlands. So we've got some really, really special woodlands in the county as well. Lots of famous bluebell woodlands, and the bluebell woodland is probably one of the most iconic sites you can go and see in the UK. You know, the sight and the smell of a really lovely bluebell woodland is something you can't really better. And the fact that we've got these bluebell woodlands means that the soils have been undisturbed in these woodlands for over 400 years. So we have got 3 or 4 of our woodlands are really, really special places. And they're about to come into flower now. So the end of April, the nearest woodland to here is George's Haze, which is on the edge of Cannock Chase. This is a place called Parrott's Drumble, which is in the middle of Torque Pits, just north of Stoke-on-Trent. And you get, again, you're just a really lovely place to go and see beautiful wildflowers. Some of our other reserves have got veteran oak trees that were alive at the time of Henry VIII. So this is a tree in a place called Brankley Pastures, which is just near Yoxall, near Barton and Dunedwood. A lot of these old veteran trees, have become lost over time. And what we're doing is we're trying to restore, to create new areas of woodland, which will in 400 years' time be the new veteran trees. So these trees are amazing, and they're so important to be protected. Okay, hopefully this will work. Yes, so we're really lucky. We've got some amazing wetlands in the county. Talked before about the Tame and the Trent valleys. This is one of our reserves just north of Stafford. This is Doxy Marshes. And Stafford, if you've ever been there, you'll know it's really low lying. It was actually built on a marsh. And what our reserves are doing, we've got Doxy Marshes to the north, and we've got Radford Meadows to the south, on the rivers Pink and Sow. And as well as being internationally important wildlife sites, they're great for ground nesting birds such as curlew and lapwing. They're not so often curlew nowadays, sadly. I'll move on because there was a noise. So these sites are really important for storing floodwater. So the effects of climate change, we're seeing more and more intense rainfall. And what these wetlands can do is slow the flow of floodwater, holding it back and protecting the towns downstream. So we need to use our wet areas, our flood meadows, more for nature-based solutions. So as well as being great for wildlife, it's also really important to help combat climate change. So again, Doxy Marshes, all our reserves are publicly accessible, and Doxy, being in the heart of Stafford, is very well often visited. This is another reserve. So another reason Staffordshire has got some really special wildlife places is during the Ice Age, we were kind of on the edge of that area where the glaciers reached. So we have got areas which they're called the meres and mosses, and they're internationally important. And this is one of them. This is a place called Craddock's Moss. And these are areas where the sheer weight of the ice has pushed the ground down and has made little depressions. And over the past thousands of years, these have become lowland peat site. So underneath here, there's probably about 10 meters of peat. And a lot of these peatland sites have had peat dug out and sold for horticulture. But we're very fortunate that some of them, it hasn't actually happened. And so we were able to purchase this site, and we're restoring this for wetlands. So this locks in carbon. It helps mitigate against climate change. And it's also really important for wildlife as well, because these peatland sites have got some really special plants that don't grow elsewhere. So my second from last habitat is the uplands. So this is the Roaches. The Roaches is our biggest nature reserve. It's one of the iconic sites of Staffordshire. It's 1,000 acres. It's absolutely huge, and it's great for birds. It's great for ground nesting birds, such as the curlew, and peregrine as well. Which it's lovely to have peregrines in the cities, but it's even better to have them out in the wilds, where they should be. So peregrines nest on the cliff faces there. This is Lud's Church. So if you've ever been to the Roaches, I'd recommend you explore a little bit further. Part of a natural landslip, thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and you can actually walk through it, and you can just see at the bottom there's a tiny little person walking through Lud's Church. So it's a really eerie place, steeped in myths and legends, which I will let you Google, but lots of exciting folklore there. It's also a very vulnerable place. So this is back in 2018. You may remember there was a really dry summer, and there were forest fires all over the place. And there was, unfortunately, a wildfire up on the Roaches, which burnt over about 60 hectares of land and took about a month to put out. We worked alongside the fire service to help after the flames had been put out, and we're doing work to restore that peatland. So the upland peatlands that we have in our country are really important, as they lock in peat, they lock in carbon, and they can help us do our own efforts to stop climate change or slow down climate change. So we're doing work to make the peatlands wetter, to make them wetter, which then holds water back. And again, using the uplands as nature-based solutions to stop floodwater rushing downstream, to use the uplands as a natural sponge, which is great for wildlife, but also great for people downstream. So finally, you may have seen on the most recent David Attenborough series on the BBC, they've been looking at the UK's wildlife, and there was a recent episode on grasslands. So species-rich grassland is probably one of the smallest area of habitat that we have left in the county. And a lot of our nature reserves are really, really special places to go and see wildflowers. So these are orchids. This is in a place called Brown End Quarry in the north of the county. This is a place called Thorswood, which is near, not too far from Ashbourne. These are greater butterfly orchids, and this is an area that we restored. So this was 10 years ago. None of these wildflowers were in this field. We worked with the local farmer next door to take green hay from his land to restore some land that we'd recently purchased. So really recommend a trip up to Thorswood in June. It is stunning. And again, this is another nature reserve where we have early purple orchids. So there's a lot of these ancient grassland sites, and it's really worth hunting them out. And a large part of our work is to create new wildflower areas and new areas for wildlife on our own land, but also working with other landowners across the county to make Staffordshire a better place. So I'll end there, and thank you ever so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That's absolutely fascinating. That idea of nature-based solutions to environmental problems, I think, is something that we should all embrace. Very, very efficient and creating beautiful environments here in the county for us to all enjoy. So next up, I'd like to welcome Steve Anderson from CPRE Countryside Charity. I've lost you then for a moment. There you go, Steve.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. Good afternoon. So yes, as it says on the slide, my name's Steve Anderson. I'm a trustee with the Countryside Charity. Most people will know as the CPRE, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Again, thank you very much for the warm invitation to attend here this afternoon. My day job is I'm a funeral celebrant, so it's really nice to see faces smiling back at me for once. And I do love the idea of having the wake before the main event as well. If I ask you to stand and sing, just ignore me. I'm going to start by being just a little controversial. The Brexit word, that horrible phrase that has come up in so many conversations. One of the things I think we missed in the debate around Brexit wasn't trade, it wasn't tariffs, it wasn't migration or anything else. It was our relationship with the countryside where we live and where we play and where we work. We have a wonderful set of countrysides among different styles of countryside around England and Wales. And I think it's imperative that we have that open discussion about the relationship we want to have with those going forwards, because at the moment, that debate is being drowned out by so many other things. Where's the clicker gone? So CPRE, a little bit about the charity itself. Has been around for the best part of 100 years in various guises. Each county branch is generally a unique independent charity. So we have one here in Staffordshire. The charity started life as the Council for the Preservation of Rural England. It's changed its name to the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England. And more recently, the name again is migrating to the Countryside Charity. It does what it says on the tin. We look after the countryside. We care about the countryside. And what makes us unique, perhaps, in a rather crowded environment of charities that operate in the countryside, is we don't own any lumps of it. We care about all countryside, irrespective of its value, or its farming heritage, or anything else. We care about the countryside, and most importantly, the relationship with rural communities to the countryside where they exist, because it's the relationship between people and the countryside that's at the heart of what we care and what we do. So moving on. In effect, we have 6 main areas where we focus our activity, and I'll whistle-stop tour my way through those 6. The first, unashamedly, nature and landscapes. Jeff picked up on one of the unique factors about Staffordshire that's often overlooked. Anybody recognise where we are on that photo? Well done, that man. Well done. So you're looking here, Grindy, you're up in the sort of in the Derbyshire borders, but you are very much still in Staffordshire here. Looking out towards the Manifold Valley, you're in the National Park, the Peak District National Park. So as well as having the Peak District National Park, we've got Cannock Chase Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, and of course we've got a whole host of different local nature reserves, triple SIs, landscapes that are of real heritage value to us in the country. Things that CPRE also gets excited about: dark skies. It's one of those things that many of us who are of a certain age will remember as youngsters, going outdoors and seeing the magnificent sky on a cold, frosty night. Getting increasingly harder and harder to see the night sky. It's inspired a whole generation of people into astronomy and into science. And CPRE will campaign and continue to campaign for protecting our night skies from unnecessary and unwanted light pollution. Another thing we care about very much in landscape and nature is hedgerows. It's a big campaign of ours at the moment. Over the years, and I'm looking down at Philip here as a farmer, Dan farmers have grubbed out thousands and thousands of miles of hedgerows, all for the benefit of increased food production, all to accommodate larger farm machinery in the main. And to a certain extent, that has contributed towards, first of all, our ability to capture carbon, and secondly, towards the loss of species biodiversity. CPRE is campaigning hard and working hard to raise grant money to reinstate hedgerows wherever we possibly can. And finally, there is something about nature and landscape being for everyone. We talk about rural communities, predominantly not from a particularly diverse background, but our countryside, and I will repeat this probably again in the presentation, is often the countryside next door to much bigger conurbations, particularly in the south of our county. When we look across Wolverhampton and Walsall, places where there's very little access to green open space, the beautiful countryside of Staffordshire offers that opportunity to embrace the countryside and to use the countryside for fresh air and exercise. So that's the first of the six. The second, farming. I touched on farming. Anyone want to have a guess at where that one is? A bit harder. No, it's not. No, not Halfpenny Green. You're just down the road, in effect. You're on the Canwell Estate. This is Buzzard Valley. One of the things CPRE will talk about relentlessly is our countryside has to earn its keep. We can't just pickle it in aspic. We have to accept the fact that countryside is paying its way, and increasingly that's about diversification of farming. As climate change, as local demands and local taste change, we have to embrace different ways of farming and different varieties of landscape as well. So whether that's vineyards or whether that's greenhouses, we have to accept that that's part of the changing environment. Better places to live is an important one. CPRE is often criticised as being the charity that likes to say no, particularly when it comes to new housing and new building. We have a mantra that we stick to, which is about the right houses in the right places. We are a growing population and we are a changing population, and absolutely accept the fact that new housing is needed to accommodate that. But most importantly is what we cannot do is simply tarmac over the best and most beautiful bits of countryside, because for the developer, that's where they're going to make the best return on their investment. We've got to try and recycle brownfield sites wherever possible, and we've got to make sure that any new developments are suitable for the local environment. So what's the road infrastructure like? What's the rail infrastructure like? What's the housing, the schooling, and all those facilities that communities need? And far too often we have seen whole new estates being plonked on the edge of a very small rural community, with no thought about how that's going to be assimilated into that village life. But for the developer, it's a great return on the investment. We also talk about countryside next door. So mentioned it before. The green belt for us is sacrosanct. The green belt helps prevent that urban sprawl and the hollowing out of urban populations, which will just increase urban deprivation, but it also provides the heart and lungs for people who live in urban areas to come out and enjoy the countryside. So for CPRE, the green belt is sacrosanct. We talk a lot about litter and recycling, particularly one of the main campaigns we've been supporting in recent years has been a return to the deposit return scheme. Far too much of this throwaway world that we live in. And CPRE is often out there helping to organise litter picks and clearance schemes. And one of the things which we are currently promoting, as we are aware, we've got the King's Coronation coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and CPRE is helping local parish councils organise litter picks as part of the celebrations of the coronation. Only two more to go. Sustainable transport, and this is one dear to my heart. This green bus was the local bus company, and you've noticed the past tense, the local bus company in my community in Kinver. They came in with great ideas. They were going to brand the bus with vinyl wraps promoting Kinver as a destination because it is just on the edge of the Black Country conurbation. They were going to improve the service. CPRE loves this. We talk about every village, every hour for a rural bus service, and they were going to extend the service to different places. They lasted about 12 months. The money ran out, and they basically handed over the keys at nothing more than a week's notice to the local county council to say we can't make this service pay, and we've got to get over that. Last one for me. Oh. Last one for me. Helps you press the right button. You don't have these problems at funerals, climate change and energy. We know we are living in a world of climate change, and Staffordshire has played its part in both the coal industry and also in energy generation, and that, for most people, recognise was Rugeley. We know that our countryside will change. We know that climate change will have an impact on our countryside. We know that in some cases that's going to lead to opportunities, and solar farms and wind farms are a contentious issue. Many people will think that the roaches covered in wind generation would destroy the look and feel of it. But we have to accept that these are trade-offs that we may have to make. And whatever that future looks like, and it will largely be thanks to landowners if we are going to go down a route of better energy generation, better capture of energy and better local use. But we have got to embrace that discussion now. We can't keep waiting for other people to come along. So a final one from me, a bit of a quiz. So what have these got in common? I'll keep clicking them up one at a time until somebody wants to shout out what they think the answer is. It is interactive, this bit, remember. Nobody going to have a guess yet what these have got in common? You only got two more.
They're all in Staffordshire.
Yes, they're all in Staffordshire. Thanks for that, Phil. Hadn't thought of that. Staffordshire Way. Staffordshire Way goes through all of these. It's something that the local CPRE has got quite excited about recently. Staffordshire Way is one of a network of national trails, but probably the least well known of all of them. You know, Offers Dyke, the Pennine Way, places like that, everybody's heard of. The Staffordshire Way, really? Is there one? Where does that go then? It's a really well thought out route. Depending on which direction you're walking, Kinvesh Malcop or the other way around, 96 miles of some of the really best showcasing bits of Staffordshire. And last year we organised a couple of events. We had on Staffordshire Day, May the 1st last year, we had a team of runners working in relays. They managed to get a tracker from one end of the Staffordshire Way to the other, 96 miles, within the 24 hours of Staffordshire Day. The first guy who set off at midnight was running through some really hairy countryside at silly hours in the morning. I'm surprised he didn't get arrested, to be fair. But the Staffordshire Way is part of this story that we've been talking about this afternoon. It ought to be a reason for people to come to Staffordshire. It ought to be part of a destination. It ought to be the sort of thing that people will walk over the space of a week, stopping off in B&Bs, putting money into the local economy and enjoying the beauty that's on our doorstep. But what do they do instead? They jump in the car, they drive up the M6 to Staffordshire and they go and walk around the Peak Districts, the Lake Districts, or somewhere pretty. We've got plenty of pretty and we need to bang that drum a bit harder. So that's all from me. Right, would you like to turn to the hymn book? No. Thank you.
That's fabulous. I'm speaking at a cemetery and crematoria conference next week, so it's been a bit of role reversal. So there you go. Thank you very much. Some really thought-provoking stuff there. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions about some of that later. And our final speaker today is Carol Adams, Head of Horticulture and Biodiversity at the Trentham Estate. So Carol, all yours.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yes, so from Trentham Estate, I don't know whether many of you visited us and seen the site. I'll just pop a picture up to show you what Trentham Estate looks like. So we're positioned sandwiched between the M6 motorway, which is up at the top end of the slide there, and the A34, with Stoke-on-Trent sitting down here. So we're in a really handy position in terms of visitors being able to access us only sort of 15 minutes off the M6 junction 15. And what's unusual about Trentham, what got me excited, I originally started out in horticulture and was drawn to the gardens and was managing the gardens initially. But actually, when you start to look at what Trentham has to offer and listening about the county, we're in a really fortunate position where we've got a really diverse range of habitats all within the estate, within the 725 acres of the estate. And what we've been finding post-pandemic is that our visitors are much more interested and engaged with the wildlife opportunities and sort of connecting. You know, we've become more aware of our environment and are interested in finding out more about it. So we've identified that we've got these range of habitats from wetland meadows up at the top end here, Tags Marsh, through to a restored lowland flower meadow here at Kay. We've got the gardens, which you may be familiar with, and I'll show you some pictures of that in a second. And then across on the far side of the estate, what was historic parkland is woodland pasture, which is a really endangered habitat type. And we've been working on restoring over the last 10 years. And then we're in the very lucky position of having a triple SI. So we've got a site of special scientific interest in Kingswood, which is marked with the C at the top there, which is beautiful veteran trees, predominantly oak, but we do have some beech and some beautiful chestnut, sweet chestnut in there as well. And so that's a broad range of habitats, and it does mean that the public can get round in a day and see all these different habitat types in a day. And just to give you a flavour of how Trentham's progressed, originally the garden was laid out as a historic parkland estate with a Victorian edition of the Italianate gardens. And you can see here at the beginning of St Modwen's ownership of the estate, that the lakeside was very much a sort of reservoir. It's classed as a minor reservoir with mown lawn edges, and the lake was being used for water skiing and jet skiing. And you can see the woodlands here were dense. This pathway here, which is our main route around the lake, was overgrown with rhododendron ponticum, a non-native invasive species. And the estate kind of fell into restoration of habitats, kind of almost by accident in a way, the approach that we've taken, because the garden restoration was very much about restoring it as a garden attraction and an innovative garden attraction with modern sustainable planting designs. But actually the beautiful planting that's being created is fantastic for wildlife. And so we're finding now that the wildlife that's moved into the gardens and is enjoying the gardens is actually now drawing the public in to see the wildlife, which wasn't what the original intention was. And in the woodlands, where we had been doing restoration work as part of a higher level stewardship, and as part of work with the Forestry Commission at removing rhododendron because it posed a risk to the habitat, and was, had a massive effect on the biodiversity, was removed, and the removal of that rhododendron then opened up an opportunity to develop planting designs using native plant meat species and garden species as well, which has created a new sort of layer to the planting. Here we can see the Italian gardens and how radically changed the Italian garden was from pre-restoration with the bones of the original Victorian garden in place there, but with a very sterile lawn habitat by comparison to the garden that's been created using sustainable planting. And it's not turning it back into what would have been there before. It's not turned it back into the meadow that would have been there. But what it has done is created something that draws hundreds of thousands of visitors into the county and draws hundreds of thousands of locals to visit on a regular basis, with maybe between 5,000 and 7,000 visitors each day coming to the site. And you can see here the sculpture. We've got some of the fantasy wire fairy sculptures. That's a local artist that was discovered by one of the team exhibiting locally in a village event. Was brought to the site, and we now have 21 art installations by this artist. And we regularly are bumping into visitors that are coming from America, for example, specifically to see the art. You can see here it's been also drawn photographers in to take photographs of the first swallows arriving last year on site. And so you can see also the Eastern Pleasure Garden with its planting schemes as well, and how that attracts wildlife. On the more broad estate, we've been fairly radical, it has to be said. So there was a lot of commercial forestry in place at Trentham, where ancient woodlands had been clear felled and had been planted with conifer plantations. So part of the restoration's been removal of that. Been working with Staffordshire Wildlife Trust and the Canal and River Trust and the Environment Agency on works along the River Trent corridor, creating fishery opportunities, and we've got kingfishers seen on a daily basis now along the river, and engaging with local community groups and charities and tree planting events to restore woodlands. And then more recently, and I know there's a few mentions about, well, you can't possibly speak, Carol, without mentioning beavers. Well, behind you, letting me start talking to you about beavers. My goodness. Fortunately, only got a few minutes. So we started out, I started looking at what didn't we have at Trentham? What should we have at Trentham? And looking at our habitat and looking at how we were managing them, one of the things we were really missing was beavers. We're meeting ourselves coming back, trying to manage our tree cover and to try and create more open mosaic meadow habitats, whether that's right on the edge of the water or whether that's further back into the site. And creating that sort of diverse mosaic of perennials and marginal plantings. We introduced water voles as our dipper toe in the water, so to speak, and they arrived with us last year. We had planned on bringing them in the year before, but because of the pandemic, the project got pushed back a little bit. And so we've got water voles. We released 220 water voles on site, and people were like, oh my conscience, should be overrun with water voles. But you know, you just need to remember that just like blue tits have a family, and they'll have a huge nest of young fledglings, and they'll not all make it to adulthood. It's just the same with water voles. So although we released 220, we are not overrun with water voles on the estate. Although having said that, the other week when I was looking for beavers in the night, and I could hear rustling, and I kept thinking, is that a beaver? And then you'd hear the distinctive plop of a water vole jumping through the debris into the water, rather than the distinctive splash that a beaver makes when it dives in. So we've been introducing species, managing species. We've got water voles, we've got beavers, and beavers. We are translocating, or we have translocated, a family of 3 beavers to Trentham. They've come from Scotland. They've come from an agricultural setting where they've been causing a problem on that site. It's a small number of beavers that are causing problems in specific locations, and it's very much about them being translocated or management techniques being applied to enable them to continue to live alongside us. And Trentham's got this wonderful opportunity of having thousands of visitors coming to see us every year, where they can come and see and find out and ask all the questions. If I got asked, do beavers eat fish? And what are they going to do about the fish eating? Oh my goodness, I could be going on a really good package holiday if I've been getting a pound for that every time I get asked that question. But it is about dispelling those myths and helping people to understand more. We've got our wildlife spotter sheets. We've got our new members of staff being recruited to help with visitor engagement and that side of things as well. And we work with, again, we're a private organisation. We are commercial. We are totally commercial. It does actually give us a benefit on occasions where, you know, if we can find a reason for doing something commercially, it can fast track us maybe a little bit more quickly than some of the organisations that we work with. But what we do want to do is work with all the experts. And I've just put an example of the organisations that we've been working with over the last few years. And it's very much about us collaborating together and supporting each other in raising the profile of what we do in the county and what makes the county very special. So this picture of the beavers being released at Trentham, and hopefully we'll have a video working with a bit of luck. Sure. So yeah, we've got the largest beaver enclosure in the UK. We didn't set out to be the largest beaver enclosure, I have to say. What we did was we tried to create an enclosure where the animals and our visitors don't feel like they're enclosed, they feel like they're in the environment. If anybody wants to come and find out about how to have beavers on their site and what's involved, just give us a shout, give us a call. It's all about engaging and enabling biodiversity to blossom, really. And this is a keystone species, so although it's been quite challenging to get them onto site, actually, you know, we've learned an awful lot along the way, you know, and it is very much about getting the process rolling in the UK. So it's an example of the sorts of projects that are happening in the county.